We have two more speakers for you and then a panel discussion. And I have a question for you to start with.
Test.
Let me see, let me see. Yes, there is it. Which one is more challenging, fundraising or delivering a product or service that fits the market? So either fundraising or delivering the right product or service. What is more challenging according to you? Grab your phone. If you haven't logged into Slido, I think most people were here before the break as well. Go to Slido, sli.do, and use the event code. Let me see. I think most people have logged in right now, or not? No, 30 people. But I think delivering a product or service that fits the market is more challenging. So
I fully agree.
you do agree. But should you be here on stage then? Because you're talking about fundraising, or not?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's why I chose this side instead of the harder side at the
All right, all right. Well, let me announce you probably, since you're here already, you deserve an applause. You are an investment manager, I should say, at Peak, and that's a European venture capital fund. And you will tell people how to pitch your AI startup. So give him a warm welcome, Thijs Dijkman. There you are.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I fully agree. I think they are quite intriguing, right? If you nail the delivering a product service that fits the market, it will probably make sure that the fundraising is easier. So thank you for having me here today. I will tell you more about how to pitch your AI startup to investors. So first I will give a short intro about Peak so you know who we are, what our position is. And then secondly, I will tell you how we look at companies. And with that T-score framework that I will tell you more about, hopefully you get the ingredients and get some inspiration on how to pitch and what to look for. And then finally the Q&A, of course. So who are we? Peak's an early stage VC. We're currently having a 66 million fund. We have a European scope, so we invest in the Nordics, the DACH region, and the Benelux. We focus specifically on SaaS, marketplace, and platforms, really those business models, but it can be throughout a variety of different sectors. And AI, therefore, is also a specific component that we really like and can be applied in either of these platforms. We focus on early stage, so we invest 250K up to 4 million. We're fully backed by entrepreneurs, so we're not the typical investment banker turned investor only looking at the numbers. No, we have been through the trenches, we have that entrepreneurial experience, so we look more than just numbers, and we really care about the people and the team behind it. And happy to see that we also have quite a diverse investment team, so not only white old males that are investing, but really also a female partner, female team members, and quite some nationalities within the team. This is our portfolio. I'm not going to go through all of them, but funny to know that 4 out of them started right out of university. So that's Tudaku, Dime, who was here actually in the startup village, Workwise, and then I'm missing one which is United Wardrobe, which was based out of Utrecht. And we have one company that's really busy with AI, which is Media Distillery. And they also came out of a research institution and eventually made it to VC also. Tell you about me. So who am I? I'm an investment manager at Peak, 5 years working at a team, responsible mainly for sourcing and investments in the Benelux. And on the portfolio management side, working with 3 of our portfolio companies, Trango, H5, and Workwise. So then the question that I'm supposed to answer here, of course, how to pitch your AI startup to investors. So what do investors actually look for? Well, to put it just in one statement, investors look for exceptional teams in large markets with initial proof of realizing their ambitions, which is still quite vague. So let's go a little bit deeper. First thing that we really care about, and it's in the previous presentation also mentioned, is the team. And it was mentioned that team is actually one of the biggest challenges and biggest reason for failure. I wouldn't say the team is the reason for failure, but it's the reason for success if you nail it the right way. So yeah, what we look for is complementary skill sets. So really teams that have both the technical experience, and here I would assume most of you have indeed this AI experience, but we are also specifically looking for really the commercial experience. So how do you bring the product to market, and are you able to sell? Then we look for founder market fit. So really a reason why you as a team have a specific insight in a market and a specific insight on how to solve this problem, and why you as a founder are the best one to solve it and bring it to the market. We really value also eye-to-eye conversations. So don't pitch everything is good, but also tell us what you're struggling with, so we get a sense on, hey, can we actually help you with that? Then what we tend to avoid is founders that are doing it alone, because we really believe you need multiple expertises within your team to make it a big success, and it's just really hard to find it in just one person. Also little to no tech expertise, so if you outsource your technology, yeah, that's a big red flag for us, because we really believe you have to build your own technology, because you're building a AI startup, so one of the core things is obviously the tech. And then incomplete team, so if there's only commercial people or only technical people, but no clear balance. And what we see specifically in AI startups is that you should focus on what makes you the winning team. Probably there are a lot of other teams that have sort of the same idea and are already working on it, especially if you look across the borders. So what investors look for is, okay, what makes this team special? And why are they the ones that will actually succeed where others have failed? Then on the traction side, we look for customer validation. It's not that we need certain revenue numbers already, especially in the very early stage. We can actually invest pre-revenue, but it just makes it so much easier if you have that initial customer already there. And what we then want to see is that it's not only a specific number on revenue you're making, but we want to see that there is a certain quality to that revenue, so that you're able to, one, make a good margin on it, but two, that a customer really derives value from it and is using it actively. Then a thing that we look for, but it's very hard to determine in early stage, is healthy unit economics. So what are the unit economics? That's how much does it cost to acquire a customer, and how much will a customer bring you in value over time. And there it's important in the early stages that you can sort of make an assumption that it makes sense that the cost for acquiring a customer is lower than the amount you will receive. So think about a very specific AI solution where you need a very long enterprise sales project. If in the end you only get a contract for 500 euros a month, then probably that whole sales process costs you way more in time and hours, and you will never earn that money back. So long sales cycle, you need a big contract. What do we tend to avoid? Capital efficiency, if you are spending a lot of money but not are able to grow, and if users are not engaged. That tangles into the revenue quality. That's also really interesting with SaaS, marketplaces, and probably the AI solutions you're going to build. You can really measure, is a customer using it the right way? And therefore also can act if a customer is not using it, and take action before they actually churn. So tip for AI startups in the early stages, I think it was mentioned before, but really validate that business case with that initial customer. If you have that customer, make sure that you make a certain one-pager with the business case on it. So you can use that also for new customers, but also show to your investors so that they see, hey, there is a market for this, the customers are happy, so something is happening here. Then on the thesis side, that's really the value proposition. What we look for, obviously, is a strong value proposition where it's very clear that the problem you're solving is a painkiller, and the solution you provide can really return on investment for them. We look for big markets. If you go for VC funding, you have to have the ambition to build a really big business and then exceed valuations of 200, 500, or even go for the unicorn status. And that's something you have to realize when you start a startup and want to raise by VCs. So you have to approach a big market, or you have to approach a big market vision that you foresee that in the next years this will be a very big market. What do we tend to avoid? The third one was scalability. What we also see with AI startups is that most of the time there is a certain customization required to get a customer live, and that's a different customization for another company. And that will mean that you probably need quite a big workforce and quite some time to being able to acquire a lot of customers. And I wouldn't say that the process you should totally get rid of, because most of the time if you serve large clients and very complex AI solutions, you actually need it. But be thoughtful about, okay, how can we make sure that we can really scale, and what steps in the process can we make sure to take certain shortcuts to get that customer live sooner. What do we tend to avoid is vitamins. If it's a really nice solution, but it's not really a problem that you are solving. Second one is overly crowded markets where there are already a lot of others trying to solve this, and if there is a lack of differentiation. Because if there is an overly crowded market, it's probably also a big market, and if you are not doing something radically different, then it's going to be difficult to really disrupt that market. And here, also my tip here, really make sure that the nice solution that you have and all the difficult technologies that you apply actually solve a pain, and make sure that it's also make certain things practical. Sometimes it's a very difficult solution, very complex, but to make it actually work, you have to do some simple and boring stuff, and you maybe have to do that to make it really a painkiller and make it work. Then the last T, that's really the timing. So the question we ask ourselves here, is this the right time for peak to step in? And that is the team ready to scale? Do they have a clear investment plan? Where do they want to go to? What are the proof points they're looking for? Is the market ready? So is the market ready for this solution? And what we tend to avoid is highly diluted founders, imbalanced cap tables, and strategic investors. So what's important, that you as a founder are also really committed in terms of the equity, and not giving away a lot of equity in that early stage already. And my tip here, if you're looking for funding, and I'm very curious at the end who is actually looking for funding, raise something that will get you to the next proof point. So that can be go from one or go to initial product launch, go to that first customer or maybe 10 customers, or that you can prove that you can attack a certain market within a country, or that you can prove that you can attack a certain market in different countries, and make an estimation on, okay, I need this amount of capital for a runway of 18 to maybe 24 months. But after that, you need to have certain proof points so you can raise a bigger round on a higher valuation. So I know normally you shouldn't make slides with a lot of text on it, but it's very handy because this is just a one-pager and I already see a lot of pictures. so that's very good. Thank you all. Curious to the questions.
Thank you. Yeah, we already looked into what is more challenging, but you had a question for the audience as well.
Yeah, who's actually looking for funding already at this stage? Okay, there's one person. Anyone else?
Oh, you get all the funds we have.
We're still trying to find product market fit.
No. Okay.
Exactly. That's more important. So if you nail that one, and then you can indeed approach us. But if you already want to have a conversation, you're also free to reach out and go for that early cup of coffee, because we tend to invest in lines and not in dots. So.
Ooh, wisdom. Ah, well, we will remember this quote at the end of the day. So, a question for you. Have you invested and succeeded in startups that include active researchers at the university?
Yeah, that's actually, Media Distillery was one, but they were from the TNO Research Institute. And that was actually funny because there you had two very technical co-founders and really knowledgeable about AI. But the big question we as a team had is, do they have the right commercial skills? And we were very transparent in that feedback. And they actually went out into the market, found a very strong commercial co-founder, attracted him to the team. And there we said, okay, this is the team and the market we believe in. Let's go for it.
Okay, so commercial skills are critical success factors.
Exactly.
Here, yeah. So what roles, wait a minute, what roles the researchers who developed the initial AI technology should have in the startup, ideally?
Yeah, it's interesting because with AI startups, indeed, most of the time you have someone who has a PhD in a certain knowledgeable field.
Yeah.
And most of the time they still want to continue that research indeed at the university. But you get a lot of talent then also from the university. So really being the visionary, we call it the hipster, can be a very strong position. So knowledgeable about the product and the market and the latest technologies, and able to attract a lot of technical talent to the team.
All right, so that there are a lot of skills in one. Why do you call it a hipster?
We have a framework, the hipster, the hacker, and the hustler. So the hustler is a commercial one.
Hipster, hacker, and hustler.
Exactly.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
And do you want me
Yeah,
to
you
explain?
can elaborate on it, sure.
So the hustler is the commercial person, the hacker is the technical person who can actually build it, and the hipster is really the visionary about the big market and product.
I love it. Yeah, things to remember. Do we have time for more questions? Actually not, but let's just do it. What roles, did we have this one? Yeah. What roles and equity levels are red flags? Did you mention this? When you said there's a red flag when people don't develop their own AI technology. So are there more red flags?
There are plenty. If they're not in the teams, no. No, I think that's a pretty obvious one. I can elaborate, but I would take it as specific.
Okay,
would
be too specific. Okay, and maybe a short one. Do you favor B2C or B2B?
I like that question. I mean, as an investor, it's easier for us when things are more predictable. So if it's B2C and you have a lot of data that says more than you have a large customer, but it's only one. So that could be B2C, but within B2B, we also made plenty of investments. And we also, what's interesting there is the contract values are way bigger. So most of the time also market potential is also very high. So we can do both, but I like the predictability.
Ah, all right. Good to know. Well, then we have answered all the questions. Big applause for you.
Cool.
Thanks, Thijs. Thank you. I'll grab your mic.
Yes.
And let's go to the next speaker, if I can catch it all. No, I don't have enough hands. I should be an octopus. All right. Our final presenter takes us on a bird's eye view of the... Yeah, I'll do. And he already walks on stage. I'll mention it. No, that's all right. I was busy with two things at the same time. Multitasking, never do that. Okay, where was I? You were going to say something brilliant about the AI startup ecosystem in the Netherlands and how it can best be facilitated. And I'll just announce you, since you're here, Arjan Goudsblom from TechLeap. Yes. And you can turn it on. And then I have to mention our dear sponsors. Thank you very much to make this event possible. And that is Startup Amsterdam. So a big applause for Startup Amsterdam. Yeah. Woo. And we are partnering with Startup Village, this wonderful location, and TTT.ai. Thank you very much. And now you're standing here, Arjan. Let me see. There is a question in Slido I would like to have answered. And that is just to get to know you. And maybe interesting for you too, in what kind of organization are you working? So please go to Slido and answer the poll question, because I'm curious. I think we are with a lot of academics. Yes, we are. Like 2/3 of the audience. Okay. 1/5 corporates. some startups or scale-ups, some supporters, and some elsewhere. I'm always curious about the elsewhere. Where do they come from? Do they come from the government, maybe? The elsewhere? Are they government people? Yeah. See, because, dear people online, I cannot exclude you, so I won't walk too much with a mic to you. But okay, let's leave it. Let's hear it at the bottle where the elsewhere comes from. Arjan, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much. Can I have a follow-up question? Because academic, to me, what I'm very interested in is obviously aspiring entrepreneurs, right? So academic, actually all categories, except for the startups from scale-ups. See, that's interesting as well. So, my talk, oh, I don't have the title yet, but I wanted to talk about the title because I see all these nice defined topics coming by, you know, and I think, and then I always get the tough one, you know, so I get like, okay, so sort out the next 5 years, you know, so that's my assignment here, to talk about what's going to happen and how we can best facilitate the next 5 years of startup ecosystem for AI. So a lot of the talks have been about obviously very tangible things like fundraising, product market fit. We all know that. So I thought I go from a slightly different angle, and I take a more behavioral approach or attitude approach or mindset approach. And it's good to see that there's a lot of startups here, but also a lot of other organizations. So divided into 2 messages. So I'm going to show them. You already saw them there. A message to the support system and a message to the AI startups. And I'll talk a little bit more about these 2 topics. Message to the support system is to be generous. So generosity, I think, is something that we want to achieve over the next 5 years. And boldness for the startup side, something that is very important. Now, these 2 things are also grounded in a little bit of research that TechLeap has done over the years. So I touch on that when we go there. But what do we mean by being generous? And maybe first of all, we've done some research on the ecosystem, and we see that there's a lot of protectionism around startups, particularly the hubs that are in the regions. They try to protect. They're actually not very happy if the startup kind of goes out of their regional boundaries and look for international connections. So that's something that we really want to see. So be generous, I guess, with the space you provide for startups, for your startups, to explore other parts of the Netherlands, other parts of the ecosystem, both nationally actually and internationally. Make sure you share resources, so knowledge, learnings with the ecosystem. Again, that's really useful as a whole. We see that there's much to be achieved in that. We spoke a little bit about trying to get startups off to a flying start by providing resources, and resources is time, money, and space, and conditions for the startups to access data resources, in particular for AI startups. And a more easy to navigate regulatory environment would be very useful as well. And finally, last but not least, for universities, by providing very generous IP terms for startups to spin out of universities as well. So these things we found over the years to be very important, and hopefully we can improve on these things over the next few years. Then on the bold side, on the startup side, we see other things. So there is some research there that actually shows that the ambition levels of Dutch founders are not as high as other countries. Well, the US is an obvious comparison where there's a lot of boldness, and we definitely can learn some lessons from that. But even within a European context, the level of ambitions for Dutch startups could be a lot higher. And by doing that and creating real exciting narratives for your startup, you'll find that you'll be able to attract more finance and easier opportunities in what you're trying to achieve. So develop a global perspective early on, learn from your peers, and learn from the best. And also be deliberate and active in participating in the national and international AI community. Now we've seen TTT, we've seen ICAI, all great examples already of communities that you can participate in. But I think we can be a bit more deliberate about how we set those up. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. But first, a little bit about myself, because I noticed that I need to also introduce TechLeap a little bit, because not all people know exactly who we are. My personal journey is about assisting academic founders on their journey from science to impact. Although I started out in a corporate career for quite a long time, I have been working in this space for the last 8 years, both as a founder of my own company called Preneurs, and for the last 2 years as a connector at TechLeap. Now, TechLeap is an organization that helps startups and scale-ups in the Netherlands to grow. Their focus is mainly on scale-ups, so we talk about companies that are already established, but need that last push to kind of grow internationally. The reason for that is that we see that a lot of startup activity is already well organized within the Netherlands. There's a lot of startup activity. There's a lot less conversion from startup to scale-up. Hence the reason why TechLeap exists and try to do a good job in improving that ratio. Now, what I found as a kind of a connector, and I started out in my entrepreneurial journey in Australia. I was in this incubator, was a tech incubator, deep tech incubator in Australia. This beautiful big industrial warehouse, large 40, 50 companies, all had their own little offices and labs at the bottom. But it was dead silence. And when I walked in, I couldn't even see a startup. And obviously that was because they're quite in their comfort zone, being in their spaces, developing their products and their technologies. But I found it fascinating, because for me a business was about like going out there and talking to customers and validating your proposition. So what we managed to do over the years is to really get them out of their offices and get them connected together in particular. And even the nerdiest of nerds actually come out, and you have to organize your activities really well. Table tennis is a really good one, competitions, but there's other things you can do to really kind of mobilize that community. And from that, a lot of successes evolved, and a lot of lessons were shared as well. And the feedback that we got from them is that I didn't know who was next to me in the other office. I wish I would have, because they told me some really amazing things that I could learn. Which brings me on to the next topic, actually, which is my main kind of message here, and that is founder communities. Because in the end, it's really difficult to set something up for yourself, by yourself, and you need support, you need networks, but you also need peers that can teach you how to navigate the system. We notice I've been working in health tech for the last year. It's incredibly convoluted, difficult space to operate in. You need your peers to tell you what the shortcuts are, and you need to know them pretty fast. So go and look for peers in your environment and look for the communities that can help you grow your business. Now, Bold, we set that up within TechLeap, is a community, it's a handpicked community. It's curated. It's for scale-up founders and CXOs in the Netherlands. And the purpose really is to push and to challenge the founders to think bigger, to think bold, beyond their comfort zone. And we do that in a number of different ways. And this is to show that you can't just like bring people together or put them in a group. You actually need to actually organize and activate those communities. You need to do it quite thoroughly with formats that are relevant for founders. Because if you don't do that, the energy kind of zips out of it, and people don't find any value and go somewhere else. So there's a number of ways that we do that. Some are open to all, some are curated, some are invitation only. And the types, the flavors that we kind of put in there is called Boost. That's an in-depth, kind of practical 2.5-hour session around a specific topic. It's like a deep dive, could be fundraising or recruitment. It's led by experts, so really experts in the field that can tell you all the ins and outs of that particular topic. Ask is, in this case, it's the art of scaling. It's story sessions with top founders who've done it all before, so they can share their lessons. It's about Q&A, ask me anything type of format. Connect is more curated one-on-ones. So this is kind of handpicked. You have a problem, we know a company abroad, we connect them together, and they go off and get particular advice on how to progress. And it's all about the quality of the network, obviously, and the quality of the connections that you get. We have meet types of events where the whole community comes together. We had a kickoff a couple of months ago, I think, a month ago, where 350 people came together, top founders in the Netherlands, all scale founders. They've never seen each other, obviously, so for them it was inspiring to see everyone in one place. It was all live. And we call on those big occasions, and I find it a beautiful term, engineered serendipity. So we actually don't, we kind of build in some triggers where people are able to find the right person. So there's a bit of modeling involved in that as well. And then last but not least, we also have programs. This is RISE and Global. But I am actually a big fan of using tracks, so very specific tracks on particular topics where people can really accelerate their development in a short period of time. So this is community formats, and we are starting to see that in a lot of different areas. I'm involved still in the AI Coalition, where I started with Anita, who's here, and you can see her later on stage. There's a European AI startup landscape, which has a lot of community potential, in my view. For now, it's just a collection of AI companies, and the great thing about this is that all different regions have nominated their own AI startups that they think should be in this overview. Obviously, the next stage is to how can we activate this and make it useful for AI startups as well to learn and grow quicker than they usually would get. So again, there might be some of the tools that we're using within TechLeap already that we can apply here as well. This is a program, and this is kind of I put this in there because we started with this in the AI Coalition, in the startup working group. This Breaking Barriers program. There will be a new version of that as well within the AI Coalition. And this was to mobilize AI startups who ran into the same issues, the same barriers, and we put them down as a group. So you figure out and you figure out your own solutions. We try and help you overcome those barriers. And once we've proven that we can do that, we try and scale it up to something that is useful for the rest of the community as well. So this is another type of format actually that you can utilize within your community as well. So Breaking Barriers is an interesting initiative. So what I'd like to see in 5 years, well, a highly connected, a more connected AI founder network in the Netherlands, particularly in terms of numbers, an increased number of AI startups growing into actual scale-ups. And also successful AI founders inspiring a new generation. So one of the things obviously is to give back to your community that you came from, which is a great quality to have in a community as well. So once we have successes, we'd like to keep them and have them tell their stories of success to starting founders as well. So that's the flying wheel, as we call it, that we're trying to achieve. So that's it for now. Thank you.
Still, most people are working in academics, so nothing has changed. So, our first question, Dutch universities have rules blocking full-time researchers from having more than 5% equity in spin-offs. Do you see that as a problem?
Yeah, well, I mean, I spoke about a little bit about the generosity item earlier on. I mean, obviously for founders, and also in the financing presentation that came to light as well, you don't want to end up with a list of investors that are passive, that have a lot of equity, but not really any role to play. So and we spoke about it actually during lunch. It's great for universities to have a large stake in a company, but with that comes also strategic partnerships and development, right? So if it's that, if there's a mutual benefit for both university and the startup to stay involved and stay connected, I think that kind of justifies a higher stake. But in general, if it's just a purely transfer, IP transfer situation, and there's no more involvement, I think that should be as low as possible.
Yeah. So, is IP maybe outdated in open source, the new standard?
Again, we spoke about this during lunch. We had well, there's different reasons for, and I'm not an expert, to be honest, in open source versus IP at all, but you can do both, but it requires obviously some thinking. And if you do outsource or open source, it requires another business model, right? So you can apply and change your business models so it suits an open source development. If you have really specific expertise and you're relying on that expertise to build a business, securing IP might be the way to go. But
yeah, okay. Looking 5 years ahead, what are your thoughts on the next potential AI winter?
Well, like I said, I mean, I've worked in health tech for the last 2 years, together with Jürgen, by the way, who's here as well, and we were frustrated by the lack of, I guess, political will, to change the right conditions for AI health startups in particular, and health startups in general as well. And for AI startups in health to have access to data, to have visibility of the trajectory on how to create revenue in this system, so scalability of their solutions. When you start a business, you want to have some sort of like transparent path, some journey that you can go through, and we don't have that in the Netherlands. And if you talk about winter, if that's still the case in 5 years' time, and we see it, right? We hardly see any successful health tech scale-ups in the Netherlands. They either starve, they go abroad early, or they have a very early exit just to try and get some money back, right? And it's a real shame, and also for the health system in the Netherlands, which is full of challenges. We need to embrace, health innovation, and startups that bring that innovation. We need to make it as easy as possible.
All right. I'm tempted to do the last question as well because it got 8 thumbs right now. So the EU has a lot of AI research and talent. Why do you think the US and China seem to generate more tech companies than Europe does?
Well, I mean, it was mentioned before, we were pretty good at starting AI companies in the Netherlands. We one of the, I guess, the top country obviously in the world, right? We said that.
Julia said, yeah.
Yeah. So we're not bad at starting companies. It's just how can we get them to grow, right?
Yeah.
And if this is about more tech companies, AI, I assume it's AI companies. Obviously, what we'd rather see, like in comparison to US and China, we don't have enough scale-ups in AI, and that's something we need to improve. And why that is, regulation, but also fragmented markets in Europe, and often in the Netherlands in particular, a lack of early-stage investment, to really kind of boost those companies, and that's much better organized in China and US.
Yeah. So hope that will improve in the next 5 years as well.
Do hope.
Yeah. So thank you, Arjan Goudsblom.